I guess we're talking about an all-electric house, and we've talked a little bit about the solar system, so now we're kind of at the heart of it, I guess. Can you talk us through a little bit about what we're looking at here, Jeremy?
All right. So, we saw before, up on the roof, the solar panels.
Yep.
So we've got 13.1 kilowatts, quite a big system. The average system these days is 9 kilowatts, so people are going for big systems. And once you've got a house with low demand, like we saw before, and you put a big system on it, your house turns into an energy hub. So this house makes a lot of energy. It comes down here as DC from the panels. This is the inverter. The inverter converts it into AC, feeds it into the house.
Which is what we use inside when we plug into a power point.
Exactly. So it's just, inside you don't even know whether you're using solar power or you're not using solar power, other than if you look outside you know, if you can see the sun, yes, you're using solar power.
Yeah.
Now, because this house, when the sun is out, it'll be making more power than the house can use. The first thing is it sends all the power to be used with inside the house. And you should always tell your clients to make sure, like we saw with the hot water system, that it's set to charge during the day so you can make use of that power. If you've got an EV, put that on charge during the day if you're at home during the day. And anything else, if you've got a pool, your pool pumps, try and shift them, that's called load shifting in the middle of the day. And so you can make use of that. But even then, with a big system like this, you can be making more power than you can use. So the next thing to do with it is to get a battery. And now with the battery rebates, all of our clients are saying, yes, now's the time. For a long time, they're asking me, do batteries make sense? I'd have to say, they don't quite make economic sense yet, but now they make economic sense. Especially for a home that is in this situation where every month of the year, it'll be making more power than it's using. You don't have those. If you've got an inefficient house, this is quite important. If you've got an inefficient house and you put a solar system on like this, you'll be fine during the summer, maybe even during the shoulder seasons. But once you get to winter and the sun's low in the sky, you won't be making enough power to run your house, let alone fill your batteries. So come night time, which is when you want to be using your batteries, during winter on an inefficient house, you're just going to be using mains power like everyone else and paying through the teeth for it. But on this house, when the sun goes down, there's a 28.2 kilowatt system. This house, it'll be lucky to use 3 kilowatts over a night time. So there's heaps of power in here to run this after the sun goes down. And the nice thing that you're talking about thinking about society with a water tank before and trying to keep our water on site. Well, this is another good thing for society, because we've got this issue that we're using a lot of power at the night time when there's no solar. Everyone comes home from work, they put on their TV, they cook dinner, they have showers. The houses draw a lot of power at those times, and you get a big spike. And so the utilities need to make the system, the whole electric system, enough for those times of peak demand, right?
And of course that's expensive power, because we're building a power station that we're only going to use for a short period of time.
That's right. And we're in this green transition. The government wants to put all new homes onto electricity. They want to put all existing homes eventually onto electricity. Businesses, commercial, transport, all going onto electricity. So really, if you're trying to be sustainable at this point in the picture, you really want to be having a house that has very little demand, and then at night time it's got a solar that can contribute back to the grid and really help balance things out. And to that point, here you'll notice we've got just a switch on the wall. Doesn't do anything yet, but once the owners get an EV, that's where the smart charger sits on top of that. And that's another thing that they can plug their car in and they can fill up.
And that makes sense to do that at the build stage, to at least run the wiring, because it's already done and it's easy to do when you're building the house rather than retrofit it later on.
Yeah, 100%. And what people should be running, or builders should be running, is a 32 amp 3-phase cable. And they should run it from the switchboard. I'll show you our switchboard in a minute. They should run it from the switchboard to wherever in the garage the charger is likely to be, and just put it in the wall, and have a couple of spare switches in the switchboard, so that later when the owners get an EV, they can just dig it out, or they can open up what the electrician has left there for them, put on their smart charger, go to the switchboard, put in a couple of switches, and you're set. The other thing that batteries are really good for is backup. And so if the power goes down here, this house won't even know. Well, they might know. They'll get a little on their app. It'll tell them, the house is now gone on to battery. But that's all that they're going to know. They get a little bing on their phone because this house is the whole house is backed up. This is quite a big system, and the house is low demand. So, and it's producing a lot of power. So, in this instance, it made sense to do a whole house backup. But if you've got an energy inefficient home that's using a lot of power, and you've got a smaller battery system, then you might just back up a few
So
different.
you take it to your fridge.
Your fridge, a couple of power points.
One room.
Yeah, maybe the hot water, maybe. But that can use a bit of power. So and a computer, telephones, that sort of thing.
Like, as we said, we might want to at least heat or cool, probably better cool one room. So we might run a power to that appliance in
maybe
that one room.
to one aircon.
And that talks to that
fan.
idea of resilience as well, which I guess we're starting to talk about as well, is if we're getting heat waves and the power cuts out, then we can at least cool the room, we can keep our fridge cool, and we can keep ourselves pretty comfortable for quite a few hours.
That's right. And in fact, this house is all backed up, and because for most days of the year this house will be producing more power than it uses, this house could effectively run for weeks at a time off the grid. So it's actually a really resilient house, and it's a really resilient model. Imagine this in a bushfire area. Other houses have burned down. Hopefully yours didn't burn down. Well, now you're a power hub. You can be charging cars. You can be running leads to next door. It's really a great resilient model, and sort of this whole electric house thing is a new product for the marketplace. One thing to check if you're getting solar on your roofs, and you're getting a solar system put in and you're getting a battery, the most important question to ask is what happens in blackout. Does this, because some systems will back up your home, but they'll only back up the home until the battery goes flat, and then they'll just turn off. Right. Yeah. You want a system that's islanded, it's disconnected from the grid, and that means that if it's a blackout but the sun's out, the solar still works, can still run your home, can still charge your battery and top it up higher. Yeah. So just make sure that you're asking for a islanded system if you're interested in this battery backup.
So it'll still run even if the grid's not there, not on.
Yeah, correct. Yeah. And that it's important that inverters have to have a little disconnection system in them, or your switchboard can have it in some setups, because it's very important that when the solar starts producing during the day, if people are out on the street trying to fix the lines because something's fallen down, they're not electrocuted as power's being fed into the grid. So it needs to be completely disconnected. It's called islanding. So just make sure there's got that function.
So Jeremy, there are also now rebates available for people to fit solar systems on new houses. What are some of the things they want to be thinking about, or you as a builder would be thinking about in terms of integrating those systems into a new house?
So yes, there's rebates. There's rebates on your solar panels, which is nice. There's a Victorian rebate and a national rebate, and they stack on top of each other, depending on your income level for the Victorian rebate. There's battery rebates now, 30% off. So basically, and there's no cap. You can get as big a battery as you want, and the government will just pay 30% back. Or there might be a cap. There might be like 50 kilowatts or some huge amount that you don't really need. So some fantastic incentives. There's even I think the Victorian energy rebate for if you want to change over hot water systems, not for new homes but for existing homes. There's money to change over heating and cooling systems. So people really should be taking advantage of that.
Is there anything you need to think about in terms of the installation? Do you work in with the solar installers while you're building?
Yeah, there's a couple of things to consider. First of all, maybe just going back to the design, you want to make sure, if you can, with the design for designers, that you've got enough roof space, first of all, to put the
north-facing roof space, obviously.
Ideally north-facing, but east and west is okay. East and west, because the sun, that means for east-facing panels, they get the sunshine early in the morning, and the system starts producing a little bit earlier in the day than just for north panels, and west West panels at the end of the day they get another half an hour, another 3/4 an hour. So it sort of extends the time that solar works. So it's not a bad idea having a bit of east and west. And designers should be allowing about 4 square meters of roof space per kilowatt of panel that they're wanting to put up there. Which brings us to how big should a system be? So the good news here is that energy assessors, when you're doing a new home, you need to get an energy assessment, or I recommend you get an energy assessment. Ask the energy assessor, what size system should I be putting on my roof if I want a net zero outcome? Right, and do that not at the end of the design period. Do it at the once you've got a working design that you're happy with before you go too far into the process, because the assessor may come back to you with, they might say 15 kilowatts for this house, and you might not have the roof space. Maybe you want to do a redesign, a little rejiggle, or you want to look at, well, why does my house need such a big system? Maybe it's a bit inefficient. You can talk to the energy assessor about how to improve the efficiency and the underlying demand in the home.
Right. Yeah.
The other thing now with whole of home, the assessors can look at the appliances that go in the house, the heating and cooling, the hot water, and the fixed appliances, and they'll be able to give suggestions about what are efficient versions and what aren't, so you can really minimise that demand. But once you've got the size of your system, once you've checked whether it can go on your roof, okay, that's a big tick. That's the first thing. The next thing is to look at the size of the battery. Typically, what I've been finding for our homes, if this helps, that I like to put on a 10 kilowatt photovoltaic system. The average these days is 9 kilowatts. I find with our homes that 6 kilowatts of that is enough to sort of start breaking even on an annual level, producing as much power over the year as you use. I put on another 2 kilowatts that brings up to 8 kilowatts, so that for car charging, 2 kilowatts of panel will be enough to drive your average EV 50 kilometres, which is sort of a daily travel amount. And then I like to put on an extra 2 kilowatts, which brings up to 10 kilowatts. Well, it's really just to pay back the embodied carbon that's in the house. We try and minimise that, and if we're putting extra green power out into the street, that means that fossil fuels aren't being burnt to provide that power. It's being used by neighbours. And slowly I'm just saving that carbon dioxide from being emitted and paying back my embodied carbon debt. Again, just trying to be a good citizen. But that means that I've got 10 kilowatts of panel typically on our jobs. And I like to pair that with around about 12 kilowatts or so at least of battery. Now here with the rebate now, these clients have just gone to town and said, right, we're going to go and get a 28 kilowatt. Don't really need a 28 kilowatt, but the government's throwing in some money and it's nice to have. It's also sort of future-proofing them a little bit as to whatever they're going to do in the house, they've got the power for it.
Well, they run 2 electric vehicles or something, or
that's
2 electric trucks or something. Jeremy, did you work in at all with the installers to try and, minimise the amount of work they had to do and minimise the disruption to your build?
So we do try and do that, though what I've found in general is solar installers like to come in and actually do it in one hit, if they can. Now, the ideal is once you've got the scaffold up, they can come up and put their panels on, and do they can do the roughing at frame stage potentially, or once the cladding's on. That's the ideal, and then everything looks neat, and you can close all the penetrations. Make sure that it's all done properly. Some solar systems, solar providers, will allow you to do that. Others will want extra money to do that.
Right.
It just depends. In this case, we had the luxury that we could just do it all in one hit as long as we had set up for it. So on the other side of this wall, our electrician has put the switchboard, and so the connections were very close by. We knew that the battery was going here, we knew the inverter was going there, and the solar system on the roof could just run a conduit down the outside of the cladding, pop straight through, and everything's in the right place. But it depends a little bit on the design. If this was, say, inside a garage, and I wanted to be a clean design, I would pay, or get the clients to pay that extra money to pre-run the conduit and get everything into the right place before. And then there's no surprises later. Sometimes if you do it in one hit, and we had another job where we'd set it all up, and for whatever reason, laws changed, things changed, and all of a sudden they couldn't do it the way we wanted it, and so it is better to do it in 2 hits if you can. Now, from a safety point of view, this is a double-storey house, and the roof pitch, 30-degree roof pitch, starting to push it a little bit. The way that the installers did on this job, they had a large cherry picker. They had harnesses. They clip themselves to the cherry picker and take up a couple of panels at a time. They had roof edge protection, and there'd be someone up on the roof with a harness hooked on, taking it up. And so it was a 2-man, 3-man job, and they were very safe
well
about
organised.
it. But this is really important. The last thing you want on a building site is some sort of tragedy, which could happen at those sort of times.
Yeah. Jeremy, I notice we've got a bollard here. There's a couple of safety regulations we need to think about when we're installing batteries and where we can install them.
Correct. First of all, you have to, if you're parking it in a garage, and often these things are put in the garage, you've got to stop cars being able to bang into it. As long as nothing hits it, it's safe. Of course, if you drive into it, that might be another story. So you have to have a bollard, and you have to allow space for that. So when you're doing your design, make sure you allow maybe another, at least half a metre, probably a metre would be good on the length of the garage if you're going to put batteries, at the end of it or onto the side of it. The other thing, you're not allowed to put these in habitable rooms, and you have to put them onto walls that have fire protection. So that's either concrete or brick or tiles or fibre cement. This happens to be a fibre cement cladding there. And we've got James Hardie fire resistant bats, and this whole wall in fact is fire resistant. The window is a non-openable window and a fire rated window as well, because it was a little bit too close.
Right.
Technically you're supposed to have 600 millimetres either side.
Okay.
We could have an openable window more than 600 away from it, and above you have to have 900 millimetres of space as well.
And it's okay to put the inverter in that position?
It's fine to put the inverter there. If this thing goes on fire, the inverter goes on fire.
And of course, the batteries are getting better and better now as well, and the technology is changing as well. So the likelihood of that occurring is getting less and less.
Look, you don't hear about it anymore. And if you're, I did look into it a little while ago and actually found that petrol cars catch on fire much more than electric cars. So it is something to be concerned about. Yeah. I wouldn't put this inside someone's bedroom. You're not allowed to. But if you put it in the right place, it's really going to be pretty